Legendary elves already do some ridiculous things, but what if playing them filled your hand while your fallen elves powered up your commander? That's exactly what Thranduil does best, and when the elves start flowing, the Elven King keeps growing. Hi everyone, I'm Full Harmonicon and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about an elf commander with expensive taste, a ridiculous graveyard ability, and absolutely no problem benefiting from his fallen subjects. He's elegant, he's extravagant, and it's time to exude opulence with Thranduil, the Elven King. And if you love casting a bunch of elves, drawing a bunch of cards, and then cherry-picking which ability to give to your commander next, this deck is for you. Thranduil is a 5/6 elf noble for 5 mana, and he has 2 abilities that work surprisingly well together. His first ability reads, Thranduil has all activated abilities of all elf cards in your graveyard. Then, his second ability says, whenever another legendary elf you control enters, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. So the idea is really clean. We play a legendary elf creature, draw 2 cards, and choose what we discard. If that card is an elf with a useful activated ability, Thranduil gets access to it. That could be ramp, protection, a board-wide buff, more card draw, or even a way to end the game. We're not just filling the graveyard randomly. We're choosing the next tool we want to give our commander. If you enjoy synergy-focused commander breakdowns like this, hit that subscribe. They happen every week. The strategy here is super straightforward. First, we get a bunch of elves onto the board as fast as possible. They ramp us and set everything up. Then, we get Thranduil online. Our legendary elves keep the cards flowing while the graveyard becomes a toolbox of activated abilities. And finally, we win through combat by overwhelming the table with one enormous ball of elves. So let's start with the elves that give Thranduil some of his best abilities. Firstly, Devoted Druid and Immaculate Magistrate can go infinite with Thranduil if both are in the graveyard. Immaculate Magistrate lets Thranduil pile +1/+1 counters on all of our creatures, while Devoted Druid lets him place a -1/-1 counter on himself and untap. Once the pieces are in place, we can repeat that process for a ridiculous amount of value. Lathril, Blade of the Elves, makes elf tokens when she connects with an opponent. From the graveyard, she also gives Thranduil the tap ability that drains each opponent for 10 life if we have enough elves. Fauna Shaman is perfect here. We can discard a creature, deliberately put the ability we want into the graveyard, then tutor another creature to our hand. Formidable Speaker gives us another discard outlet when it enters, while its activated ability lets us untap another permanent. Gerard, Golgari Lichlord, grows as creatures pile into the graveyard, but more importantly, Thranduil can inherit the ability to sacrifice a creature and drain each opponent equal to that creature's power. High Perfect Morcant makes opposing creatures weaker as we keep casting elves, and from the graveyard gives us access to proliferate by tapping 3 other creatures. Underrealm Lich helps us fill the graveyard while filtering our draws, and it also gives Thranduil the option to pay for life to become indestructible. Then, we have a few elves that can give Thranduil the ability to just end the game. Azuri, Renegade Leader, lets our commander regenerate other elves, but the big one is the board-wide buff and trample. If we have a pile of mana, that can finish the table off very quickly. Elvish Warmaster makes more bodies as we cast elves, and once it hits the graveyard, Thranduil can use its activated ability to pump the entire board. Tyvar the Pummeler gives Thranduil 2 useful abilities from the graveyard. We can tap a creature to make him indestructible, or sink mana into a massive team-wide buff based on the power of our biggest creature. Next up are elves that help the deck without having to sit in the graveyard. Thranduil, Cinderin Liege lets us mill a few cards and put 2 lands into our hand. That stocks the graveyard, but it also rewards us for dropping lands by creating more elves. Thranduil the Strategist also rewards us for land drops by helping us go wide, and gives each elf we control the ability to tap for green or blue mana. Elvish Archdruid and Impervious Perfect are classic elf lords. Both buff the team, while Elvish Archdruid can make huge amount of mana, and Impervious Perfect can keep producing more elf tokens. Dionis Elvish Archdruid lets us squeeze extra value out of our tap abilities by untapping a creature after it taps the first time. Yes please. Tyvar Jubilant Brawler lets our elves tap as though they had haste, and it can also mill cards for returning a creature from the graveyard to the battlefield. Tyvar the Bellicose buffs our creatures for doing what elves already want to do, making mana. Abomination of Llanowar is legendary, so it triggers Thranduil while naturally getting bigger as more creatures and elves make their way into our graveyard. Our commander's already drawing us a bunch of cards, but we can absolutely make that more ridiculous. Priest Whisperer is simple. Play a creature, draw a card. Champions of the Perfect is the same effect as Beast Whisperer, with a few extra steps, asking us to exile an elf we behold. Elrond Moonreader draws us a card when we activate an ability on a creature. That includes something as simple as tapping an elf for mana, although it only triggers once each turn. Leafcrown Visionary lets us pay 1 green whenever we cast an elf to draw another card. Aladarmri, Corvictol, and Elvish Chorus let us cast creature spells from the top of our library. Aladarmri gives our commander another useful ability if it ends up in the graveyard. Glissa Sunslayer is terrifying to block thanks to Death Touch and First Strike. If she connects with an opponent, one of the options is simply drawing a card. Distant Melody can refill our hand based on the number of elves we control. Kindred Discovery is absurd in any Kindred deck that touches blue. Whenever an elf enters or attacks, we get another card. We're also in some fantastic colors for interaction. Reclamation Sage destroys an artifact or enchantment when it enters, and more importantly, it's also an elf. Windswift Slice lets one of our elves deal damage to a creature, then rewards the excess damage by making more elf tokens. Raise the Palisade can act like a one-sided board wipe, as long as our opponents aren't also running elves. Galadrim Ambush makes an elf for each attacking creature. Those tokens can jump in front of attackers, and the spell prevents the damage our elves take. Then, because we're in blue, we get access to counter magic like Counterspell, An Offer You Can't Refuse, and Arcane Denial. The rest of our interaction is made up of efficient staples like Ponify, Assassin's Trophy, and Beast Within. Elves Ramp. It's what they do. Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic, and Findorn Elves are classic 1 mana for a body that taps for 1 green. Elves of Deep Shadow does the same kind of job, but gives us access to black mana instead. Incubation Druid can tap for up to 3 mana, and if it lands in the graveyard, it also gives our commander more activated abilities to work with. Bloom Tinder can also potentially tap for 3 mana in this deck. Circle of Dreams Druid and Priest of Titania scale with the number of elves we control, so a wide board can produce a frankly silly amount of green mana. Marwyn the Nurturer grows whenever another elf enters, and then taps for green mana equal to her power. Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, can turn the power of our biggest creature into a huge burst of mana. Now, I know most of the ramp here is attached to creatures, but lands are a lot harder to remove. So I added a few ways to put extra lands into play. Wood Elves and Farhaven Elf both find lands from our deck and put them straight onto the battlefield, while still adding another elf body. Thranduil's Company lets us play additional lands each turn, then rewards those land drops by buffing our elves. And finally, let's talk about a few lands that really shine here. Wirewood Lodge lets us untap an elf every turn, which is fantastic when so many of our creatures have powerful tap abilities. Eclipse Realms and Secluded Courtyard help fix our colors specifically for elf spells and abilities. Elven Passage is basically a fabled passage built for elves rather than caring about how many lands we control. Hedge Maze, Undercity Sewers, and Underground Mortuary all let us surveil when they enter, helping us set up the graveyard and potentially put another activated ability within Thranduil's reach. Thranduil is such a cool twist on Elf Kindred. Instead of only going wide with a massive board, it turns every useful elf in the graveyard into another tool he can use. Combine that with the card draw from playing legendary elves, and the deck always feels like it has something going on. The longer the game goes and the fuller the graveyard gets, the more ridiculous Thranduil becomes. He slowly turns into a pile of mana abilities, protection, buffs, card advantage, and win conditions. And that's exactly the kind of synergy I love in Commander. Thanks so much for watching. If this breakdown helped you, hit that like, subscribe for more synergy-focused Commander content, and comment a card that you think I missed. Memberships help vote on future videos, and the full deck list plus my TCG Player affiliate link are down below. Consider watching another breakdown on screen, and until next time, may all your elves draw you cards.